Killing Eve is also back with the strangest scheduling structure I've ever known. I still don't fully understand
So
it.
the end of it.
I went a bit Shakespearean at the end there. I don't. Let me see if I understand this. You're going to correct me. So it's going to go online on Monday mornings under the BBC Three strand, but then Sundays
6
on
a.m.
BBC
I
One.
think.
Oh, sorry. What did I say?
You didn't give a time.
Okay, well, I would have said 6 a.m. if you didn't. If I didn't know we were beholden to a time. I think the following Sunday, that episode will air on
It's Sundays or
BBC One.
Saturdays.
Sunday. It's going to replace The Nest. Sunday, it'll air on BBC One, and then the following Monday, episode 2. So basically, the TV, physical TV, will be a week behind. It's even more convoluted because it airs a week after the US. So that's the closest we've ever got to Killing
So is
Eve.
it on in the US already then?
No, it's starting tomorrow as we record a Saturday.
Yeah.
It starts tomorrow in the States.
So it's on Sunday on the in the States,
Yeah.
and then once that's finished in the States, 6 a.m. you'll be able to get it on iPlayer.
Yeah.
And
then the
Sunday,
following Sunday,
which they're saying, I'm on the BBC Media Centre site at the moment, and it's advertising it as available from 6 a.m. on Monday the 13th of April, and then episode 1 is repeated on Sunday 19th of April on BBC One. So that broadcast date they're claiming is a repeat.
Series 2 I felt was problematic, basically because I wasn't sure what the show was, because it wasn't this cat and mouse thing anymore, and at one point they had Eve and Villanelle working together, and I just couldn't get my head around how that worked, or why it worked, or why it was allowed, and what it meant for the show long term. And you may remember it ended in Rome, where Villanelle shoots Eve, and the series picks up, without any spoilers, with Villanelle moving on and assuming that Eve is still dead, and that's where we are. This series is problematic for me for several reasons. They change the showrunner every year, which means it's somebody else's vision of where to take the story each time. That could be seen as a good thing, but on this, it's proven not to be, because I don't know what the end game is here. I don't normally worry about that with a show, because it's not my job to worry about where it's going to go eventually. But I feel like the first series set such a high bar that the second series was always going to be somewhat of a disappointment. And to use your phrase, are we just now in a state with Killing Eve where it's just diminishing returns? And don't get me wrong, Sandra Oh and Jodie Comer, still brilliant, still two actresses I highly rate in roles I really enjoy seeing them in, but it's just not the same show. It's not as fun, it's not as relaxed, and I don't love it anymore.
I often feel like I'm the voice of reason here, that you're often too harsh on shows, and I'll sort of even it out, but I wholeheartedly agree with you here. Maybe our reasons for loving the first season are slightly different. I think what worked in the first season, where Phoebe Waller-Bridge was the showrunner, was that it had that awkward Britishness about it, even though the lead was an American in the British scenes. You had David Haig and Fiona Shaw and Darren Boyd and all of those characters. There was that awkward sort of British humour which went under the spy stuff and the Villanelle stuff. Series 2 took it to the nth degree, and you're right that there was too many scenes of them together. I think the second half of season 2, where they're in Rome, where she's pretending to be... Was she meant to be an American heiress? Am I right?
You're right, yes.
And that all didn't really work for me.
No.
Here, it's so heightened now. So the bits that we get are in Barcelona. We've got Villanelle getting married in the first scene, and the first scene we see the bride giving a speech, and then who's she marrying? It's Villanelle. Dum 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 dum.
As if we didn't
dramatic
know.
music.
Yeah.
We introduce as well here Harriet Walter playing.
I couldn't get on with her.
What was her trainer? She's this Olympic gymnast who's for some reason now working in Spain, quite coincidentally. The other element of this that I didn't like was the fact that they were initially tricking you to thinking that Sandra was now living in China because she was in a Chinese supermarket speaking Chinese, and
there's none of them in anywhere else in the world.
And then you went out and you were on a British high street somewhere, and she's now working in a kitchen in a Chinese restaurant, lying low. Her ex-husband or estranged husband is in a mental facility because he hasn't got over the murder of the girl that he sort of had a thing for, possibly having an affair with.
Thing is, I didn't remember any of that. I genuinely didn't remember any of it. So when it got to that point, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, so yeah. But it didn't stick with me.
Kenny, Caroline's son, is working for this underground magazine, a bit like the Millennium thing in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. The only bit that I quite liked in this first episode was Steve Pemberton as the new MI6 employee and his passive-aggressive chat with Caroline, because that was reminiscent of the things that were happening in the first series that I liked so much. There was that juxtaposition between the glamorous world of Villanelle and this boring grey office
mundane
job.
Office.
Which that's what really spoke to me in the first series and gradually dissipated. There's also stuff going on with the Kim Bodnia character as well, which I think for me, I'm going to watch maybe another couple of episodes just to see where it goes, because this was an establishing episode.
Yes.
There was lots of disparate threads that I'm sure are going to be joined together, because there's not a direction for the show yet.
I bemoaned the fact that they were always joined at the hip in Series 2. And now I'm bemoaning the fact it's almost too disparate. Not only are even Villanelle separated,
all the characters.
And it shows me how little I care for Kim Bodnia and for Kenny.
His character called? I can't
Constantine.
There's essentially 5 different stories going on in this first episode. I get the impression that they're going to dig in a bit more to the origins of the 12, which I think is something
I've already sort of forgotten about.
Something
I
they
think
promised
that's quite
at the
a
end
convoluted story of an origin story about the 12. I don't really get it, if I'm honest.
But these are, you're saying the different showrunners in each season, but they are based on novellas, aren't they? So
yeah,
I'm not going to discount this thoroughly because it was an establishing episode, but there was a lot of misdirects and things that I didn't feel were necessary. It almost felt like the latter series of Sherlock, where they kept trying to put one over on you and rather than working alongside the audience.
For me, it leaves me thinking, do I carry on? Do I, because I love Series 1 so much, do I stick with it? Jodie Comer and Sandra Oh, as I said, still brilliant, but do I invest time? We already know there's a Season 4 with yet another showrunner that they haven't announced yet. Do I just carry on? I mean, I honestly don't know. And also, what I always say is, when you've been away from a show like we've been away from this for a year, the key to whether a series is going to work again is how quickly you're able to put yourself back in that atmosphere, that show's world. And I really struggled to get back into this, watching this. Even if I'd seen it if I'd gone from episode 8 of Series 2 into this, I think I'd have struggled. It was just too much the other way. I just wasn't invested. Harriet Walters' accent, she can't do whatever accent that is. It really wound me up. And I thought her character was so thin, and her whole backstory just wasn't believable in the slightest.
It didn't bother me that much, but I wasn't intrigued by it, I suppose.
No.
It is the...
The thing is, though, I put out on Twitter, I forget, it wasn't nasty, it was just something about, I didn't like the opening of the first, I forget my words, but I didn't like the opening of the first season, of the first episode of the third season. There's so many Killing Eve fan accounts that got in touch saying, why, how can you possibly say that? And I tried to explain it, and they appear to see it as a love story between those two characters, and I don't buy into that particularly. So maybe that's my issue.
Yeah, it's one of those things where they what they call
The
ship
fan,
them.
yeah. So they've coming at it from a completely different angle than I am. I'm looking at it as a show and as something that's written, and does this need to still exist? The answer's probably no, but they're looking at it as it's a relationship between these two characters, and I don't see that.
And there was an element of that in season 1, that obsession that Eve had towards Villanelle, and which manifested in her stabbing her at the end of season 1.
Yeah. So season 1 ended in Villanelle being stabbed. Season 2 ended in Eve being shot. So where they're going to go in season 3?
That is a reading of it, that
Yeah.
there is this underlying obsession. I wouldn't particularly call it and I think Villanelle has that for Eve as well.
It's just lost its sense of fun for me.
Mm.
That's what it always was. Even the episode that I didn't particularly like last year that you liked with Julian Barrett, where he locked her in the house, I wasn't a massive fan of that, but it was fun.
It's forced fun now, isn't it?
Yeah.
It feels forced fun. Like, come on, you liked this before. Why don't you like it now?
I always remember Jimmy McGovern saying the reason why he doesn't think writers' rooms work is when you write something yourself, it's your opinion on that world. And when writers' rooms get involved, it's nobody's opinion on nobody's world, because everybody's just chipping in their bit. And I think that's what Killing Eve has become, because it just gets handed off to the next person. It's a bit like when a showrunner of a soap comes in and they've got to fix all the things they didn't like about where the soap is before they can implement
get rid of
their
a dozen characters
that they don't like, and make it plausible before they can implement their vision. And I think having, like last season, having Villanelle shoot Eve, where do you go from there? It's a really tricky place to pick up from. It's not as a model that should work. These new showrunners, I appreciate Phoebe Waller-Bridge is massively busy. She's still listed as an exec producer, but how involved she is, I couldn't tell you. But I don't think it works just giving a show over and saying, like a pass the parcel thing, now you do something with it, off you go.
I mean, it has in the past. I mean, they have done it before. I can't think.
Not so consistently like this year on year.
No. So
but they've already announced season 4, and they've already said it will have a new showrunner, and they have yet to announce who that will be. So it is a trend that they obviously think brings new life to the world, but I think it just moves it further away from what the show was, and it's lost all its spark.
Yeah, I don't think I had as much of an issue with series 2 as you did until maybe the last couple of episodes. But there just felt like too much. When you mentioned it with Quiz, this
winking
really
at
had
the
that
camera.
winking at the audience for me. Whereas I didn't find that with Quiz. I found that with Killing Eve, definitely.
More people were like me, sort of lukewarm on the second series.
I like every time you say lukewarm.
I know you do. I do it for you only. It's a shame because that first series, just so perfect. Would it have worked as just a one and done? Yes, but that's not the way TV operates nowadays, unfortunately.
At the moment, there's these disparate stories. Eve really doesn't have a lot to do in this first episode either, and she's the heart of the show, really. She's the audience proxy, so maybe it will even itself out when those characters have more interactions, but where we are at the moment, I am very cold on it. It's not worth
even lukewarm, just
not
cold.
even lukewarm. Yeah, I was trying to stay away from lukewarm because that's your gimmick.
You're just cold.
Not cold.
Okay,
Matt Tepid.
Killing Eve concluded last Sunday on BBC One and BBC Three. This was the third series, show ran by Susanna Heathcote. This final episode was written between Susanna and Laura Neal, and they've announced a few weeks ago that Laura Neal will be taking over as the new head writer for the already confirmed Series 4, although obviously that's all up in the air because Killing Eve is a show that not only has a lot of cast and crew but likes to go across the world, and who knows when they'll be able to go to these exotic locations as a big team. In the way the world
They'll
is
have
at
to
the moment.
self-quarantine for 2 weeks when they get there.
Guys,
For me, I found that it was a interesting distraction for 45 minutes. It was something that I knew the characters quite well, and I think the time period that it's been on, it's helped just having some sort
Something.
of distraction, something that completely takes you out of where you are, which is what Killing Eve does.
Do you not get that
But
from the Salisbury poisonings?
I am going to ignore that. I suppose we should just maybe just talk about this series as a whole and the confused mess. Because I think you could easily tell someone what the first season of Killing Eve was. I think you could more or less sum up the second season, couldn't you? I think as well. I think that that they come together in Italy and work together to try and bring down. I can't remember who the guy was now, but some guy they tried to bring down. It was still quite focused, even though it lost it a little bit. It was still quite focused on the plot in hand. This one went all over the flipping place, and you never quite knew where you were.
And because of that, it felt a lot shorter than other series because it felt like it never really got going. It felt like it spent so much time playing with the format and playing with time and playing with different places and different looks at characters, and it never really felt like it got going to me.
The first element of the plot was Kenny's death and trying to find out who killed Kenny.
Bastards.
And it turned out that Constantine confronted him on the roof of the Bitter Pill magazine, and he fell to his death. That was rather anticlimactic.
Or did he? I think there's supposed to be some element of mystery around that.
Okay.
Did he fall or was he pushed, sort of thing?
Okay. So, and I didn't even get that.
You did sound like Mr. Mackey there. If we could,
The second element of it was Villanelle trying to learn about herself and her roots and reuniting with her mother in Russia, and that for me was the strongest part of the series, the episode in Russia where it was just Villanelle and her family. And then you had this through line, which I think people who are still fans of the show, they're fans because they like the relationship between Eve and Villanelle. And this.
Am I weird? I must be odd. I never really sort of see them as a romantic pair.
But that's what
the fans have latched onto, isn't it? Like there's the ship side of it.
It feels like they're playing to more and more this obsession that the pair have got about each other, and I think certainly in the final episode where they're dancing in, was it Blackpool they were?
Blackpool. Yeah, did you see Tess and Daly off to the side?
Tess and Daly?
Tess and Claudia, rather. Tess and Daly.
And the final scene where they're on the bridge and they're looking at each other and it just ends. And it just all felt a bit confusing. I thought in the 7th episode, they introduced a character played by Alexandra Roach, who was this new
just gonna bring this up.
Recruit, like Villanelle without the faff, without the theatrics.
Theatrics, exactly. Yeah.
You know, she's a killer who just gets on with it. You saw her kill, or you didn't see it, but she killed Mo in the previous episode. You thought this is going to be Villanelle's new counterpoint, a new nemesis, and the 4th series, I thought in my head it's going to be Eve and Villanelle having to team up to take on this new assassin that neither of them really understand. And I thought, well, this has been a bit of a stupid series, but if that's what this is building up to, and she's got the 12 behind her, and then they just kill her off. Villanelle pushes her in front of a train.
My problem with Killing Eve is it does two things. It either kills off really interesting characters too quickly, like David Haig, or it keeps on characters that you feel don't have any point to them, like Kim Bodnia's Constantine and Eve's husband Nico, for far too long, and tries to shoehorn them into the series.
And all the stuff with Constantine and his daughter and her running over.
So disappointed when she fell on those train tracks in that finale, because she was an interesting addition. She was completely different, felt completely new for the show, and then for her, it's like Villanelle is always going to have the upper hand. The show can't cope if Villanelle hasn't got the upper hand, and that's
what I liked in that Russia episode, because you saw her vulnerability in that a little bit as well. It's the only time they pulled the mask down a bit, and I know you see like a childlike aspects because I think they try to explain that here, that she never really grew up because she never really had that childhood,
No,
and she reverted back to being a child and being
regressed.
yeah. And I think I liked that element to it, and I was like, can we not have this level of quality throughout? But we had to get back to the shitness of it, and the bits where Eve almost catches Villanelle on the train, or they're on that bus together. She gets this scent made for herself.
And the teddy bear.
This series has felt so bitty and so segmented, and like Steve Pemberton's character didn't amount to anything. Oh, he was dodgy, he was in league with the 12, and I
And
thought
now he's
maybe
dead.
that
Yeah.
they would have more about the 12 in this series. When they introduced Harriet Walters' character and her connection to this group, and then again, she's another everyone they introduced this season, bar the sort of comedic bitter pill employees, all died. They killed everyone off that
Yeah.
they introduced.
It's a bit like they do a pass the parcel to make it as awkward for the next writer to come
Yeah.
in, and it doesn't hold together. I try, because as you say, I watch this with my folks. I try and turn my TV hat off and go, most people don't know or don't care that Phoebe Waller-Bridge left after series 1, and then it was Emerald Fennell, and then it was Susan Heathcote. Most people don't care or know that. So does it hang together, series 1, 2 and 3, as a cohesive show, propelling things along? And the answer is no. It doesn't. It just...
I'm shaking my head, sorry. I'm not. I realise
yeah.
I'm not on video this week.
It just does not work. It just has no idea where it's going to go. It just keeps throwing the writer hat across to somebody else and go, there, you do your thing with it. But
do you think then, if Phoebe Waller-Bridge was still in charge, that it would still have that through line to it, or would that story still feel stretched if the same person was in charge? Is it because it's a different person, behind the camera in charge every time, or is it simply because this shouldn't have continued past the first season? These characters should have stayed in. That end of season 1 was perfect.
Yeah.
Because I think like Emerald Fennell had a good vision to it and had a good idea, but I think stretching these characters, and this season I think has struggled because it's brought in so many new characters as well. I can't remember
in season you can care about.
I can't remember in season 2 them really bringing anyone new into it in any sort of sustained entity. It was the same bunch of characters.
But like you say, the only person
Kirby Hal Baptiste to disappear completely off into the good place.
The only people they didn't kill. So like Gemma Whelan was in there, but she was even sent off at the end of every series. Wipes the slate clean, and it really annoys me. The biggest mistake and it was made in that series 1, which was so perfect, which could still be held up as one of the most perfect first series of anything, and perhaps should have ended there, was they should never have met in that first series, because once they meet, a lot of the pressure is off, and then you've got to find a way of them meeting again, but not meeting so obviously that they're together all the time, and it's moving further and further away from the title. It's not about killing Eve anymore. I don't know what it's about. It's about uncovering the 12, but that's going to feel like a massive damp squib.
Like when Taggart died and it's still called Taggart.
You're not wishing ill on Sandra Oh, are you? Sandra Oh just can't come back from America, so she's never in the next series.
I don't understand then why they didn't just call it Codename Villanelle than the name of the books and have fun with it, because that would make a lot more sense. Looking at the 12, and that, again, that sort of, it set that up early on that this is what they were trying to do. This is what Kenny was trying to do, and this is might be what Eve is going to continue to do. Look into the 12, uncover that, and that has been something that's been on the back burner.
Won't that feel like a bit of a damp squib? Because I don't really care who the 12 are.
But at least it's something. At least it's something. There's nothing here. As you say, everything just went round in circles, and nothing. I don't think anything had been achieved apart from maybe finding out what had happened to Kenny. But as you say, we don't even know if that was the truth.
because of the way it did it, when we got to 8, I was like, oh, we're at 8 already. Not because the episodes were so good it flew by, but because it didn't have a beginning, middle, and end. It just sort of, oh, you've done your quota of 8 episodes, good on you. But, I mean, we're going to have to wait till at least
I thought at the end,
2022, I think, for the next series. So
you asked in the when we reviewed the first episode, how are they going to end this? Because the first series ends with Eve stabbing
And-
Villanelle, and then the
yeah.
second season ends with Villanelle shooting Eve.
Eve.
And then this season, it just ends with them staring at each other on a bridge. I thought they might hug and then throw each other off and then both end
Yeah.
up in the river.
Both end up in the river. Which one survives?
Yeah.
Which one was picked up by the river cops? They'd be
But-
in trouble now because there's no lifeguards anywhere.
I suppose, how do you see then the series begin? Are they just going to be living together? It's going to continue exactly where it left off, because the last 2 first episodes of the seasons have been picking up from where we left off. So
But this wasn't a definitive cliffhanger
No,
ending, was
no.
it?
it's like, what's going to keep me coming back other than, oh, let's see how it
Jodie
ends.
Comer's still having fun, and she's
Yeah.
still fun to watch.
Mm.
Sandra Oh this year, I thought I had the least interest in that.
Has she
character
been
I've
filming
had all
something
year.
else? Because it felt like she had a mind
It's
up.
like she went back to Grey's Anatomy for a time. I don't think she did, but she had a lot of weeks off.
It was less Sandra Oh, more Sandra. Ugh.
Yeah, she wasn't really that engaging this time. But again, it's the material, it's what they're given.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
like you say, there was some proper energy and steam that could have been got of Villanelle making an enemy of Alexander Roach's character, and I'm having to say
And
Alexander
the,
Roach's character because I've no idea what that character's name was.
no. And the story of her like losing her mojo a little bit as well, and that became again that you lost that when she pushed her in front of the train.
But
That
you-
could have been a good the assassin who can't kill anymore and has lost that spark that she once had for her profession, and they wasted everything. Felt like we had to zoom past
That'll
it
happen
to get to that final scene. It's just going to be routine that keeps people coming back unless they really promote this as the final season. See how it ends. You've waited for years. Are they going to get together? Because that seems to be what people reading comments and things online. That is what people are clinging on to. The fact that, are Villanelle and Eve going to get back together? Are they all going to get together? You know, is this more than a infatuation and obsession?
Maybe
This is
I'm
actually
maybe I've got a form of autism, but I don't see that relationship at all.
it's people reading too much into things, and then I suppose the person in charge changing the characters to fit what.
To fit the mold.
Yeah. Because, for example, and again, this is something that I saw on an internet video. I hadn't realised at all that one of the seasons of Westworld, they changed the ending because the internet had guessed how it was going to end.
I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like it feels more and more, and I think there was an element of this to the Game of Thrones final season as well. That writers now are playing to what the internet the really obsessive internet fans are clamoring for, rather than writing the story that makes sense from the characters that you started off with.
Killing Eve is all available on the. It's all available on the iPlayer if you want to watch it. Enjoy.